All right, let me just check to make sure that it's on air. Make sure that it's on air. Okay, so it's definitely live. Okay, so we're on the air now. All right, guys, this is Ty Zen, and with me today is the Honorable Grandmaster, legendary, world-renowned LeonFu.com, the great oracle of crypto, the Chuck Norris of cryptocurrency, and simply just an all-around good guy. Say hello, Leon.
Hey there. Hey, everyone.
Okay. Also, today with us, we have a special guest that was introduced to us by David Johnson from the Factum team from the city of Austin, Texas. We have with us Stephen Sprague, who's the former CEO of Waves System. And he's here with us today to explain to us and share with us about the Rivetz project. So say hello to everyone, Stephen.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me on the show.
Okay. And I'm broadcasting from Los Angeles right now. Leon is broadcasting from Austin, Texas. And Stephen is broadcasting from Barcelona, Spain. So let's go ahead and get started here, guys. Could you share with our audience here a little bit of your background and what you've been doing and kind of lead up to how you started Rivetz, Stephen?
Sure. So my background is in the trusted computing area. I've spent most of my life trying to help put hardware security directly into the platforms we use every day, initially in PCs, and then ultimately into mobile phones as well. And I ran a publicly traded company in the trusted computing space for 15 plus years and left there in 2013 to start Rivetz and go after how do we enable mobile security within the mobile platforms that we have directly in the hardware of the chipsets and provide the software and services to make that work.
Okay. So you give an example of where I know you speak devices and hardware and stuff, but could you just give the audience an example of what you're talking about or the type of security that you guys were working on?
Sure. So inside the actual chipset of your phone, in the main processor, is a technology called Trusted Execution Environment. And what Trusted Execution Environment is an isolated processing area that is protected by hardware that allows us to run code and hide secrets that are independent of the operating system. So for the first time, you can not only store a secret, but process that secret without worrying about malware in the operating system stealing your keys or changing the process.
Okay. And then so you left a publicly traded company called Waves System and you started working on Rivetz. Could you talk to the audience a little bit about what inspired you to start Rivetz and what that's about?
Yeah, it was really simple. From about 2010 on, every time we went anywhere, every customer said, "So what's your plan in mobile?" And we were entirely focused on the PC side. And so it became very clear that we needed to do it as a separate company. And so I left Wave to go after pursuing a mobile application set, really on a next generation of technologies. And now I find it quite funny because every time I go see a large enterprise customer, they go, "So this is so cool on mobile. Do you guys have any plans for the PC?" So some days you just have to shoot me. I think eventually we'll get to a point where everybody turns on their hardware security, but it's been quite an adventure.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about how you met David Johnston, and that way we can kind of lead up to where we're at today?
Yeah, certainly. I got introduced to the Bitcoin space in 2014 by actually one of my board members, and got enticed to go down to the Miami Bitcoin conference because it was minus 20 degrees at home, and it was like 81 in Miami. So spending the weekend in Miami seemed like a good idea. And I read the Satoshi white paper on my way down to the Miami Bitcoin conference. And really from the first half hour of the first cocktail party, it's been very clear to me that there's an enormous synergy between trusted computing and the technologies we have to protect keys and generate instructions, and blockchain, which has this fantastic capability to store facts on the internet that won't get changed over time. And so the key management of the blockchain and the ability to immutably store information on a long-term basis is really a powerful capability. When you mix those two together, I think we have the foundation for really the new model of enterprise computing, supporting the mobile environment, as well as, as we look forward to things like Internet of Things, et cetera. Where are we going to keep all the keys for all these devices?
So from there, then at what point did you get inspired to start Rivetz, the project itself?
So actually, I started Rivetz before I got involved into the blockchain space. We went down a path actually in the very early stages in 2014 to build a white paper around an attestation coin where every trusted execution environment would verify the integrity of every other trusted execution environment. And it's a cool idea. It's just been way too early to start that process. One of the core capabilities that trusted computing has is this ability to store and process a secret. But the real question is it running properly? And so there's actually a mathematical process where we form a hash inside the trusted execution environment that tells us it's operating correctly. And so this fall in October, we built a demonstration a year ago where the health and integrity hash was stored on a blockchain, and then we modified the actual script of a Bitcoin transaction to support the capability of matching. Does a reference health test equal a real-time test? And this way we have a cybersecurity control for the transaction that's on the network.
So Stephen, I got a question for you. So you just said that we are able to validate, one machine can validate what another machine is doing. How do you make sure that the machine you're talking to isn't just lying to you? Like, let's say I'm one machine and you're another machine, and I just tell you, yeah, I did that. How do you know that I really did or did not do what you're saying, what I'm saying?
Sure. One of the core principles of the trusted execution environment is to solve the lying endpoint problem, which is that we actually can, from the root of trust from the original hardware manufacturer, build a cryptographic chain of each step that builds up this environment, including the loaded code that's written by Rivetz. And so when we look at that hash, if it hasn't changed since last time, then we know that code is executing properly. And so what you want to do is when a transaction is created, you actually want to test that that hash is the same as when you set it up in a reference condition. And so the huge step forward has been the ability to bind that hash into a transaction on a blockchain transaction. And it would work with a smart contract. It'll work with a native chain as well if you modify the chain process. And so we're providing a mechanism for a provable cybersecurity control where it's bound into the actual transaction. So you know how the private key was protected for the transaction that was written on the internet.
Okay, but I'm still a little confused. I do understand where you actually sign, you have hashes of executing, but if I'm the device and I'm reporting to you these hashes, I still don't see how you can verify that I actually, or maybe I just made them up and just I didn't do, I tell you one thing and then I go do something else. I mean, how is that if you're the other machine? Let's say I'm one machine and you're the other machine, and we know what the code is going to be, how it's the hashes of each step, but how do you know as the other machine that that actually happened? That's the part I still don't see.
Sure.
Understanding.
So in order to build a reference hash, we actually do things like test the actual manufacturer's keys against their key chain. And so we verify in the process steps. So the Trusted Execution OS has a reference hash when it was manufactured in the factory. So we can go from the hardware root of trust from the manufacturer all the way up through the process. So when Rivetz actually produces an app, we sign it. And so when it gets loaded on top of that stack, we're checking the signature that came from Rivetz. Now, if Rivetz puts a mistake in the code intentionally, or if somebody manufactures one of the pieces with a mistake or an intentional hole in it, then we can't detect that. But we can attribute that if it's discovered, we know exactly who it came from. There are no anonymous developers in this process. So what you have is a provable stack of code from a provable collection of suppliers, so we can assure that the transactions computed came from that known stack.
Okay.
And then does that help?
Yeah, that does help. So is this similar to, let's say on an iPhone or an Android phone in the App Store, like on an iPhone, Apple has to sign all the apps before the operating system is allowed to run it. That's the way it's designed. Is this something similar where there has to be like a master key, a signature, so that we know, for example, every app that you download from the App Store was signed by Apple or signed by Google before it's even allowed to run, unless, of course, you jailbreak the phone and override that. But
that's the whole point. You can't jailbreak a trusted execution environment. There's no jailbreaking it, because it's a much smaller environment. It's executed in hardware. And so you're right, you can sign code. I can sign an object, or you can take any file and we can sign it, and we could record on the blockchain, hey, we signed it. And now if I have that piece of code and I have the blockchain, I can prove like a notary that it was correctly in place. The trick here is that when I get a phone, or if I get a PC, how do you know it's running the BIOS that came from Dell? Did you ever check? No, nobody checks.
No.
So, okay, so what machine do you use every day? We don't know. Because the BIOS that boots your computer could be loading a bare metal hypervisor, and it could be running anybody else's operating system underneath yours, and therefore steal everything that you do, and you have no way to detect it today. That's why hardware with security was put into PCs many years ago. So we could test that from bare metal, from the power on cycle, up to loading the operating system, it's verified. Now in Windows 10, they test that. And as an enterprise, you can go actually turn it on in Windows 10 today if you desire.
Okay. So what about Rivetz, though? So Rivetz, you said you anticipate this in phones. How do you see Rivetz being used then? Is it going to be, are we going to have an app where, let's say I'm the publisher of the app and I can guarantee to the user that my app was running in the same state that as I published it? Is that how you see Rivetz? How do you see this being used?
Sure. So what Rivetz has done is we've built a trusted app, and we build a series of APIs that allow any third-party app developer to take advantage of our storage of keys, our encryption, our performance of transactions within this programmable environment. So you don't have to write your own code in the programmable environment because it's complicated, and ultimately it should be certified. And so what we provide instead are the tools to take advantage of that. So now you can store keys and process them. For example, like a Bitcoin transaction can be done within the isolated execution environment. And we provide those core primitives to execute that. In addition, we're providing the attestation services, and that's really where our token sale is about, is how do we begin the process of having a token that assures that the trusted execution environment's working properly, so we can bind that into a transaction or into a two-factor authentication. So you download an app on your phone, let's say do two-factor authentication, and now as part of the two-factor authentication, it won't generate your little 6-digit code if the phone itself's trusted execution environment's been tampered with.
Okay, so you're actually going to build software that runs in the trusted execution environment on your phone. So you're creating almost as a virtual trusted execution environment that third-party developers can then build their code into. Is that how it sounds? Because you're not manufacturing any hardware here. You're just providing software. Is that correct?
That's correct. We started a couple years ago building application software, so we have a completely operational environment today. It's compatible with probably 600 or 700 million existing phones. Our partner that provides what's called the TEEOS claims they've shipped 1 billion copies of their TEEOS. So, excuse me, you can assume that some portion of those phones have found their way into desk drawers and aren't being actively used. So 600, 700 million phones is probably a reasonable estimate of what Rivetz will run on today.
Okay, so is it basically a so how would this? I'm just trying to imagine how would this work. Would I download an app, a Rivetz app from the App Store, the same way I download apps today? And what benefits do I get?
And then there's a piece of magic. So you download an app like a normal app in the App Store, and then we provide a signal to the chipset, which completely independent of Google and completely independent of the Google Play Store, downloads an application into the actual silicon of the chipset, and that TEEOS app then provides the services. Those are under 1 megabyte of code, and that then provides the supporting security services for the normal Google Play app in the device.
Mm-hmm. So from a user's perspective, does anything change? Like if I have a Rivetz app running on my phone, is it any different than what benefit do I see as a user using a Rivetz app that I downloaded from the App Store?
If security is done really well, it should be completely invisible to the user. This is as good as the security underneath your send button. You dial your phone number and you push send, and you don't realize that there's a multi-billion-dollar hardware security business of the SIM chip every time you push your send button. And it just works. So you're happy with it. You get great service. Consumers can teach their kids how to use it and their grandparents how to use it. Mm-hmm. And it's secure. And so this provides that type of a mechanism, but embedded in the hardware. Consumers don't want to learn about cybersecurity. They just want to use their phone. What we need to provide as an industry is the ability to protect and store secrets so that drive-by malware isn't downloading all your credentials off your handset or stealing all your keys.
Mm-hmm. But my thinking right now, malware and viruses are more of a problem on PCs than phones, because even phones today are running a sandboxed environment, right? Like nothing, as long as I didn't jailbreak my phone, nothing runs on my phone unless it was signed off by Apple or Google, right? If I had an iPhone or an Android. So what I know you said that you're targeting mobile, but it sounds like this Rivetz would be a lot more useful on the desktop, since PCs are much more susceptible to viruses and malware than, say, phones are today. I mean, there's very rarely...
All of the devices have the same risk, and Apple will tell you this straightforward. They ship Apple Pay using the trusted execution environment to protect your payment secrets, because that was the only way they could achieve enough security to get the banks on board. So I don't have to prove this to you. Apple didn't put Apple Pay in tamper-resistant hardware in the phone because they thought it was cool. They put it in tamper-resistant hardware in the phone because they needed to.
Okay,
so we know this is true. I mean, we know that Snapchat, you can steal the snaps. And so we've had systemic problems where protecting a secret in a phone, while the theory is they're all sandboxed, the reality is they leak like a sieve.
Yeah, so basically you're saying with Rivetz, then anyone will be able to build an app that is as secure as Apple Pay. Is that basically your claim?
Absolutely. Why shouldn't we? In the end of the day, what we're trying to build is how does everybody from the consumer to software companies to other have carrier grade security for the protection of their secrets? We know how to fix this. The SIM module was not always there. In the early 1990s, I remember passwords for every long distance phone call because we had 80 million cloned phones in 1994. In the transition from analog to digital, we put hardware security, the industry did, in handsets, and fraud basically has gone to zero. It's not entirely zero, but it's really close. And so today we have 5.4 billion happy phone users that dial the phone number, push send, and don't expect to have their phone calls stolen. It's only recently, as we started to have SMS with two-factor authentication, where people have been borrowing the SIM module, in essence, as the only security that's there, where we've discovered that stealing phone numbers is, again, an interesting business.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So, Ty, do you have anything else you want to ask from here?
Yeah. So you had mentioned, Stephen, earlier that you guys have been, you and your team have been working on Rivetz even before you heard about Bitcoins and cryptocurrencies and blockchains, you know. And one of the things that's always common in the community is that whenever somebody tries to raise money to start a project, the question that is always on everyone's mind is that what prompted you to involve the blockchain, or how did you use what inspired you to incorporate the blockchain into the Rivetz product or service that you have? And before you answer that, let me just share an example. Like MadeSafe, so you guys, from our research, your product Rivetz falls in the distributed computing enterprise solutions bucket or sector of the cryptocurrency community. And so it's in the same, similar to MadeSafe, where they were a company that was trying to create a distributed cloud storage that's decentralized for many years. And then it wasn't doing so well until the blockchain came along, and they had a way to incentivize people to volunteer their computer memory space, hard drive space to use in their network. And that's when I believe that they started taking off. So in their case, it made a lot of sense to incorporate the blockchain or cryptocurrency technology into their product or service that they had been working on long before Bitcoins and cryptocurrencies came along. Could you talk a little bit about how you had mentioned that you've been working on this Rivetz project for a while, and now you're incorporating the blockchain into it, and why is that needed?
Sure. Actually, let me step back even further. For the better part of a decade, we were trying to build the infrastructure using public key infrastructure for trusted computing. And one of the great challenges is, how do you build a database where the keys can't be altered or changed? And so you have to build a carrier grade back office, because you have to have the cybersecurity controls around the servers to prevent the keys from being stolen. Because if I log in and download all the keys, then you can steal everything. And so I've been looking for a long time in my career for the infrastructure that would marry up with these billions of devices that now have hardware security in them. And so literally the first time I walked into a blockchain, you know, I have to say, realistically, it was reading the Satoshi white paper and then having a conversation with a bunch of people who knew what the Satoshi white paper was at the Miami Bitcoin conference. I walked out of Miami Bitcoin conference with a very clear picture that these technologies belong together. Now, I'm not the only person. You can look at things like the Hyperledger project with Sawtooth Lake with Intel. They're integrating trusted execution using Intel SGX with Hyperledger to do some of the transactions that they're accomplishing. The advantage for Rivetz is that we're bringing the consumer side of this equation. How do we make the phones and the PCs and tablets that you already have at home part of this ecosystem? So ultimately, the consumer should own their own little chain of keys that is their collection of devices. And so how's a consumer going to keep a key safe on the internet? And the answer is they don't have to. Blockchain will keep it safe for them. Make sure it's not stolen or changed, because it's really about change, not anonymity of that key. And so it's been an interesting project. last fall was the first time that we were able to actually commercialize a demonstration of what I've been talking about for a couple of years, which is how do we do attestation, or this health and integrity test, as part of a transaction. Now, in 2015, the Bitcoin community actually ran into a problem with New York State, where New York State BitLicense was asking, well, where are your cybersecurity controls for writing content to the blockchain? Because today there aren't any on blockchain. You can't prove by looking at just a chain entry that the chain entry was intended, because you have no information about the protection of the private key. And so today what happens is that an organization like a Goldman Sachs or a JP Morgan can protect a key because they have big iron wrapped around that key and can protect it with legacy cyber controls. What we want to do is make it possible for that to be possible within your own device. So when you marry trusted computing and blockchain, we get for the first time the ability to store on the ledger a provable cybersecurity control was in place as part of the transaction. So it's taken a couple of years to build the technology necessary to do this. The company's raised a couple $1 million in convertible debt, and we've done over $1 million in contract revenue, primarily with U.S. government. Our most recent contract was with the Department of Homeland Security as one of their small business innovative research grants to explore how do we use these technologies as part of priority access for carrier networks when networks are congested. So we have a really good foundation for these pieces. And now recently, with the rise of the token sales, we think there's an opportunity to fund the business model and deliver to the broader market proof that a cybersecurity control was in place, which really means hardware protection of all your token keys. And as, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So what role?
Okay.
What role is the Rivetz token, since you're going to be selling a bunch of these tokens, I believe as Ethereum ERC20 tokens? Can you go through what role, why do we need a blockchain? Why do we need this token now? And how is this token going to be used in Rivetz?
Sure. So the way our specific transaction works, we use the actual spend function with the token to carry the information for this reference health measurement and real-time health measurement. And so the actual process of a verification takes place either in a smart contract or actually natively within the blockchain script, which makes it very efficient. So we prototyped this, and we've been very successful in using the command checksig from stack, which was part of the original Bitcoin protocol, but was taken out a number of years ago. It might find its way back into the core protocol in the future, but right now it's not there. But it's critical for us to be able to compare this reference health versus real-time health. And so functionally, we actually modify the chain to support it. And then secondarily, similar to some other projects that are out there, we want to store a little bit more data on the chain. It's not like Factom where you want to store a large, like a document or something like that. We really want to store a few hundred more characters within the chain. We think that would be very useful to us. So at least in the medium term, this absolutely needs its own chain because the functionality isn't there. We could sit around and wait for 3 or 4 more years and hope that Bitcoin Core, decides to put these capabilities in. But I think we shouldn't be waiting for cybersecurity. Cybersecurity should be built in. And so our plan, go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, the coin itself will do the real-time health check that you were talking about. So I will need, if I have a device that is using Rivetz, let's say I have a Rivetz app running in the Rivetz trusted execution environment, does that mean that app also needs some Rivetz tokens in order to do this health check, and that's where the value of the token is coming from? Is that my understanding?
Yeah, that's correct. We'll use it for a variety of other purposes as well, because it's handy as a store of value, but its fundamental purpose is in actually the processing of the transaction of does reference equal real time and the performing of that test. So it's integrated in the actual test of the token.
Okay, so then this chain is going to have to, if every one of these tests, say, uses a coin or a fraction of a coin, we're going to need a chain that can do millions of, or at least hundreds of thousands of transactions per second, I'm thinking. Is that,
Sure.
So
and I think, so there are a variety of ways to achieve that. And I think they cover the spectrum from the current implementation of what's going on with Sawtooth Lake for Hyperledger is a good example of where two trusted execution environments could actually perform really tens of thousands of transactions per second. It wouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
All the way to, how do you use some of the chains that are rolling up the transactions and then executing a single transaction. We have a natural aggregation capability within the trusted execution environment as well. So a financial transaction doesn't have to happen every time a test is done. It could be an aggregated number of tests.
Okay. All right. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Ty, did you?
Okay. Yes, I do have some follow-up questions, right? So, like a lot of the token sales that are coming out, Stephen, they are just basically a bogus white paper and just a summary, a wish list. They don't have an actual working product or a software yet. And one of the things that we looked at that got our interest when we were introduced to Rivetz was that you guys actually have a working product. You've demoed it and stuff. So you guys are taking a completely different approach from other projects that don't actually have a product or a service that's actually working, and you guys actually do. What are you planning to do with the token sale? What is the purpose of the token sale to raise the funds for? Is it for marketing? Is it to fund the outreach, or is it to get it into every user's hands? What's the purpose of the token sale? Because you guys actually have a product already.
Yeah, it's all of the above. I would say it's the full commercialization of the product. I mean, we have a really solid working, you could think of it as an advanced alpha or early beta product. It needs work still to take it to the point where an average consumer, it has all the edge cases where you'll just comfortably use it every day. And so there's work still to be done. There always is in software. But I also think that one of the things that's really important to me is that the token represents for us an economic model for trusted computing that's never been tried before. So in the past, these technologies have only been sold to the CISO, hoping they're going to deploy them inside a large enterprise. Our mission is, how do I give this to a professional user or a power user, and you can deploy it on your device by yourself, and all of a sudden your Gmail account is more secure than everybody else on the planet. I think that's one of the really important pieces of this, is that this technology is only going to finally penetrate the world's organizations if we make it work on our devices and we take it to work. Because waiting for the CISO to abandon network security as a wholesale switch is too hard. We have to show them the path. And so having done this for a long time, this is a completely different approach to marketing of these technologies into the global enterprise, not from the top down, but actually from the roots up, which is how cell phones came in. It's how laptops came in. It's how color came in. This is a technology that deserves to follow that path of penetration into the enterprise, and not sit around and wait for the CEO to decide, we should build security into everything we do and protect our users' data, because they're not doing that.
So, Stephen, then I guess once you, it sounds like to me that your customer or the marketing effort has to be centered around developers integrating Rivetz technology into their apps. Is that correct? Like I'm an app developer. I did iOS development for 6 years. Your audience would be to convince people like myself to actually integrate Rivetz security into the apps that we're building. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I think that, the early way, even for any app developer, you want to see that this is starting to work and it's something useful. So if you look at our go-to-market path, it's using two-factor authentication, where I don't have to talk to the developer yet. I can just make their application better. And also machine multi-sig, where I don't have to convince the token developer to incorporate Rivetz natively into their token. As long as their token supports multi-sig, I can give this machine protection of the keys and a health and integrity test of the device and make that one of the legs of the multi-sig. So we think that our path to entry is absolutely we want to convert all the application developers to use this, but we need to clearly prove that this market is delivering value and that the revenue stream starts early on. So we're trying to make sure that we have a in our hands controlled model. We're not waiting for somebody else, that allows us to start the revenue stream in this business and grow the ecosystem from that point going forward.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. What I see is if Rivetz takes off or works as you described, that I don't need a Trezor or a ledger then, that my computer or my phone can securely store my private keys, and that I don't need this dongle attached to my computer. I can use, say, Exodus or Bread Wallet, or any one of the dozen. If you can convince, say, wallet developers to use, say, Rivetz as you envision it, does that mean it would eliminate the need for, like, me having to use a Trezor to protect my private keys, because the hardware device can do it itself? Is that something Rivetz is able to do?
Yeah, very much so. So this is Trezor-like functionality in your handset with an equivalent level of security. There are aspects that are different because it is a general purpose device. There are things where we're probably more secure than Trezor, and there are places where Trezor is probably more secure. There's a role for Trezor and Ledger and other devices for the long term, because you're going to want to, store keys in a vault, and you're not going to want to put a $500 smartphone in the vault. You're going to put your $100 Trezor, which is now a $500 Trezor, in the vault. So I think those devices still serve tremendous value. But fundamentally, you don't want to carry one of these things around everywhere you go. You want it built into your phone. And by the way, I think as we think of utility tokens going forward, like a VPN or storage, or you used MadeSafe as an example early on, you don't want to have to go to your Trezor and get a code every time your device wants to access storage. You want your device to magically be able to do this by itself. And so we believe that providing a vault for keys with a policy wrapper around it that assures that the owner dictates how those funds are spent. So you can actually have very controlled money on a device and say, oh, look, here's some value, but you can only spend it on these 3 services, and you can only spend $5 a week. Really reduces the risk of a bot driving by and stealing money from your device.
So basically, just to make it simple for the people for our audience to understand, basically using Rivetz allows me to secure the private keys for my cryptocurrency and make sure that it's safe. But not only does it secure the private keys, but you're saying that put a policy wrapper on it. Does that mean that I can put conditions on it that, hey, I can only spend those cryptos based on this condition A, condition B, condition C? I think you had mentioned offline that I can set one of the conditions that these cryptocurrencies can only be used or be sent when it's within my business office near a specific beacon, or it can only be broadcasted. Money cryptocurrencies can only be sent out if it's within 10 feet or within a 25 feet or 10-meter radius of this beacon. So a hacker in China hack into my system and try to spend those Bitcoins because they're not within that beacon, or what are some of the other, am I understanding this correctly, Stephen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that excites us about a token, is that this little trust agent in your device could ask external systems for services, really attribute services, like, what time of day is it, location, different types of beaconing things, etc. And so we see an ecosystem growing up of partners. We don't want to have to be the only provider of all those attributes. You should be able to link into, you know, everything from Microsoft Active Directory to your Google back office to, you know, maybe if you're, you know, I don't know, you could make up almost any rule you want. All these external systems have APIs. And so you could say, unless this API is valid, then don't do the transaction.
Okay, so basically Rivetz allows the user to protect the private keys that he or she has, and then it allows them to set these conditions. And basically you're saying that Rivetz is not the organization that is going to create those conditions, but the developers such as Leon and other developers out there can create those conditions and add it on top. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. The only person who's in charge here is the owner. And so, you know, I think it's really important to understand, because we're talking about lots of controls, and people are in blockchain are very concerned about controls. We're not trying to provide controls from Rivet's perspective. We're trying to enable the owner to assert controls, which, by the way, you already do. You lock your keys up in a safe, and you are the only person who knows the safe combination. And you're like, unless I open the safe, I'm not spending the Bitcoin, right? I mean, you can decide any rules you want and write them down on a piece of paper and follow them, right? So this is just a case where, how are we going to do that automatically? Because the problem is devices are very promiscuous. You know, a piece of software gets inside your device, says, hey, I hear you have some money. Can I have some of your money, right? We do that times 1 million seats running one of these existing tokens that just got sold in the last 6 weeks. How do you prevent a piece of malware emptying everybody's wallet for a Mysterium token? Well, that means you're going to have humans dole out the tokens. So how exactly is the operational model going to work? Every time I connect, like every 5 minutes on a VPN, it's going to say, hey, Dad, excuse me. It's like operating a payphone, you know, like in this call, imagine if every 30 seconds it said, I'm sorry, please, can you deposit another quarter? That would get really super annoying, right? But we can't trust the machine to keep the keys safe, because it's a store of value. We could extract all the keys, go sell them on the open market.
Okay, so could you, we had discussed line about the that Bitcoins and currencies, cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, were good as a currency for humans to transact between one another, for you and I to human being to another. And you had mentioned that something that was very interesting was that Rivetz is an attempt, the Rivetz token is an attempt at being the currency for machines to communicate with one another, right? And before you answer that, maybe Leon, maybe you can comment on the difference between a currency that's used between two human beings versus a currency that's being used by one machine and another machine.
Okay,
and
so
why there would be, so the audience would know why that's important.
Yeah, so I think what Stephen was in our offline discussions is that the problem right now is when things are automated, especially between machines, that there's no way for one machine to validate that the input from another machine is correct, or it was what it was supposed to be, that say a hacker didn't come in and you know, do a man in the middle or replace that machine with his own machine and then feed it bad instructions. I think that what Rivetz you're trying to do is so that machines can then be can assure each other that what they're doing is correct, and therefore you can they can start transacting with one another with certainty, with that they know I'm a machine and you're a machine, and that we are actually doing what each of us are supposed to be doing, versus say a currency. If it's just between you and me, it's just, is this Stephen? Yes, it is. I can see that it is, and I trust him, right? Is that basically what your Rivetz is going to be?
Absolutely, and I want to be very careful in that it's very hard to make a sort of absolute claim of security. What we're really is making a claim that the device is running as the owner expected and tested. So the owner decides, I'm going to measure these 10 things. These transactions will not go forward if when you measure those 10 things, the measurement comes back wrong. Now, maybe it's the 11th thing that steals all your money, and there's nothing we can do about that. Then you're going to have to measure 11 things, right?
Yeah.
But at least we know that the device with these 10 things in place was running correctly when that transaction was done. So we have a beginning of better attribution, because one of the problems with blockchain is the nodes of the world are spread around everywhere. So they're not running inside a network security fence. And so we can't watch the traffic. We actually have to watch the formation of the instructions.
Yeah.
And that's the huge difference. That's why cybersecurity control has to find its way into the devices.
Yeah, so we gave the example, like when we were talking previously, like for example, the fingerprint sensor that you can start, once you get the right partnerships in place, that we can put a rule saying that you can only spend these coins or these Rivetz tokens or these Bitcoins if my fingerprint was read. That's one idea. Although that doesn't stop a hacker if he was able to steal my fingerprints and hack the fingerprint sensor. He could still get get my money. But at least we know that that the transaction, say, was authenticated by, say, a fingerprint sensor or some kind of biometric sensor. Is that something that Rivetz can assure that has happened for a transaction?
Correct. And in the past, these transactions have been demonstrated. We haven't done as much of it within Rivetz yet. But as an example, we at Wave Systems, we made technology work between trusted platform modules and self-encrypting hard drives. So you couldn't unlock your self-encrypting hard drive if your PC's BIOS had been altered. There are things like that that were relatively straightforward to do, and the principles of them are straightforward. So this is about driving momentum into the market and showing that the hardware is really finally being put to work. And so Rivetz's mission is to become one of the pure play companies that's going after how do we turn this on and enable it, and how do we build a blockchain infrastructure both for the operational side and a new economic model that helps put this equipment into use.
Yeah. So
the manufacturers have been storing birth certificates for devices for years, but there's no mechanism for them to get paid in its consumption. You could clearly see how a token could be used to compensate a manufacturer of a memory chip. A few pennies is huge margin to them. Yet as an owner of a video camera, you might want to know that the baby cam is actually running the right software before you put it in front of your brand new baby, in the crib. So, the value opportunity here, I think, is tremendous for the industry.
Yeah, so it's really moving security down to the hardware level, rather than what we have right now is a bunch of passwords and two-factor and many of all these software schemes trying to protect our secrets. When really, I think what you're saying is the hardware itself has the capability to protect these secrets, rather than, whatever those secrets may be, whether it's my credit card number, my password, my username, any kind of personal information. We can use the hardware itself to store and protect those secrets, rather than trying to do all these software schemes. That's how we do them today. Is that correct?
Yeah, very much so. I think that, we took a decade as an industry to put hardware security into the devices. What Rivetz is trying to build is how do we put those devices to work for us? We already own the hardware. It's in our hands. We're not projecting that you got to go buy new devices. It's already there. Now it's time to turn it on and put it to work, because it's crazy that we're worrying about things like, SMS two-factor authentication not working when we got a perfectly good piece of hardware inside the phone or in your PC that would do it for you.
Okay.
Okay, so that's all the questions I have as far as the use and the product and the service for Rivetz. If you don't have any other questions, Leon, I want to talk a little bit about. I have some questions about the token sale.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Any other questions about? Okay, so let's talk about the token sale here, Stephen. When does the token sale for Rivetz actually begin? The official date of the token sale?
So it's July 25th, 1700 hours UTC.
Okay, July
Universal
25th.
5 p.m. UTC.
5 p.m. UTC.
2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for anyone that's watching this in the future, so they'll know. So, because we've had in the past people come and ask us, when's the ICO, and I'm like, it's already over. It's been over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's talk about this. And I just want to share some of the challenges of some of the recent token sales that's been coming up, and how you guys plan on addressing them. Because I'm sure that you guys have looked at the different methods that's been used recently. First of all, are you guys going to have a capped or an uncapped token sale?
So this is a hard cap sale. Yeah, this is a hard cap sale where we are going to mint 200 million total tokens. There'll be 70 million tokens sold in the sale. There will be a bucket of 60 million incentive tokens, of which half of them will be unlocked initially. The other half are locked for a year, so 30 million unlocked initially. And then there's the remainder of the remainder 70 million tokens will be for future use. 10 million will be unlocked initially, and the balance will be locked 20 million for 1 year, 20 million for 2, 20 million for 3 years.
Okay.
And I guess our philosophy on this is very straightforward, which is we're selling 70 million tokens to the marketplace. And we think that tokens should play an important role in the marketing and incentive of the ecosystem. But I think we should be very conservative in the use of those, and let's get the technology into the market. Let's get the programs underway, and then use the tokens to support that ecosystem as this rolls out. Our job here is to make sure that the purchaser of these tokens has value, and not to dilute the marketplace. So we're very focused on how do we deliver value both initially and then over the longer term. I think it's really important in these systems that you have a clear plan for that. I view the tokens, it's been interesting having conversations with people about market cap. I view the tokens that are not in distribution as basically inventory sitting on the shelf that effectively is carried at zero value until you actually sell it. That's sort of my mental image of it. I don't think of it as, oh, I have all this asset sitting on the book somewhere. No, it's worth nothing until it's like, you made 100 widgets and you put them in inventory. They're worth exactly what the 100 widgets cost you. And in the case of tokens, they're got a very low cost of manufacture.
Okay, so just there, because you throw out a lot of numbers fairly rapidly there. So you're saying that the 200 million available available Rivetz tokens, and 70 million of that is going to be sold off to the public, correct?
Correct.
And you said that another 60 million of it will be set aside to help for marketing and for the PR campaign of Rivetz, correct?
Correct. And to support partners. So if you have a developer who builds an application, you might want to seed them in the early stages with some additional tokens to help let them survive while their service comes up and comes online. I think is a really great use of tokens as an example.
Okay, so and then out of that 60 million, you said that 30 million will be made readily available after the token sale, but the other million will be locked up until the second year, you said? Is that correct?
Yes, correct. They're locked up for 12 months.
Okay, and then so 70 and 60, that's 130, which leaves 70 million tokens. And you said, what were those numbers, 20 and 20 that you said?
Yeah, so 10 million are available right away. And the balance are 20, 20, and 20 locked up for 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years. Okay,
all right. So basically the 70 million that's remaining, 10 million of it will be used immediately to actually for the operations and building of the Rivetz. 15 million, they will be locked up in tranches of 20 million each, and they'll be released on year 1, year 2, and year 3.
Correct.
After that. Okay. Correct. All right. So now the other question that I would have is that recently with all the Ethereum ERC20 tokens extremely quickly, many of them, even with the veteran crypto people like myself and Leon, been able to get into it. There are people that have paid large sums of mining fees to get their transactions in front of everybody else, basically cut in line. You know, we've seen as much as $6,000 something transaction fees. People who were trying to get into certain tokens, token sales. Now, you guys came up with a plan to prevent a lot of that nonsense, right? And you guys are considering doing like a pre-sale or something like that. Could you explain that to the audience on how that works?
Yeah, so we've done a pre-sale for potentially larger buyers, and the way we've structured that is the pre-sale tokens do have a bonus attached to them, but you're required to have at least 150 Ether as a minimum, and there's also a maximum on it as well, and so that provides a market for the larger buyers to participate early. In the actual crowd sale, there's a maximum today that's set at 100,000 Rivetz tokens, which works out to about, depends on it, yeah, it's about 300 Ether, because we're on a fixed conversion ratio of 0.003 Ether to a single Rivet token. And so the same bonus that we're providing to the large players in the pre-sale will be offered to the first 7.5 million tokens sold in the crowd sale, and then the bonus will decline. Any tokens not sold in the pre-sale will carry no bonus then in the crowd sale once it starts.
Okay, so basically out of the 70 million that's available to the public, you're saying that the first 7.5 million carries a bonus if someone decides to participate and purchase them during the pre-sale time period.
Yeah, now let me be clearer. The first 37.5 million that are sold in the pre-sale carry a bonus. If we don't sell all 37.5 million, then those will be tagged on with no bonus to the crowd sale.
Okay.
And when the crowd sale goes live, because we want to have the small buyer have the same benefit as a large buyer, the first 7.5 million of the crowd sale will carry the same bonus that was in the pre-sale.
Okay.
But there's a maximum, so it'll be very hard to buy a big position in the crowd sale.
Okay, so I misunderstood you the first time you had mentioned it. So basically, out of the 70 million that's available to the public, you're saying that half of it, 37.5 million, will be available for pre-sale, and then after the pre-sale is done, whatever is left over from the pre-sale will be done in the regular token sale, and then during that time, 7.5 million of that will be available to the smaller buyers that carry the same bonus.
And I think that there's no perfect way to do this, but we think this is the right way to maintain a sort of first person in. You come in, you place an order tomorrow in the pre-sale. Here's how we're maintaining an orderly business in the pre-sale, and then realistically in the crowd sale, if you want to buy a big position, you really should have done it in the pre-sale as opposed to trying to buy a big position in the crowd sale.
Okay, and so can you describe how the purchase of the tokens operates? Is it going to be you guys have one Ethereum address that everyone sends ethers to? And are you guys accepting ethers only, or are you guys accepting Bitcoins or other currencies also?
We're accepting ether only to keep it as a simple process. All the advice we got from everybody involved in this is keep it simple, keep it straightforward, so everybody can understand what it is, that there's not a lot of hanky-panky going around in different deals. So we have a very straightforward deal. There are not a lot of clauses to it. It has a fixed ether conversion on it, and so if you want to make a purchase, it has to be a purchase in ether today.
And then is that going through, like, do you guys have like a public ether address for everyone to send their ethers to? Oh, and then you guys.
So that'll be made. The contract address will. Yeah, the contract address will be made public on the 25th of July, because there's no point in funding it before then. There is a pre-sale, and if anybody's interested in the pre-sale, they can send an email to presale@rivetz.com, and we'll send them an email invitation to that address. They can see it.
Okay. Okay. So I just want to make sure that the audience understands that that's the address is presale@rivetz.com, and Rivetz is spelled with a Z. And because we've had a lot of phishing websites that they'll use the name of the cryptocurrency plus a bogus domain extension at the end. So make sure that you guys go to, if you guys use the correct email, if you decide to participate, that it's presale@rivetz with a Z.com, and with that extension only and nothing else. Okay, just for security reasons.
And what's important also from a security perspective is check the signature of the web page. All of our web pages are SSL based. They're all signed, so you can validate the address on that page. And so it's served off of one of our web pages.
Okay, so after the pre-sale is done and after the regular sale is done, do you have any plans on getting the tokens listed on the exchanges, such as Bittrex or Poloniex or anything? Are you guys in the works to get that listed? Because a lot of the traders and investors are looking to trade it also after it's done.
I think it's an important piece of the puzzle. I think that from a company perspective, we're supporting the product side of it. We will certainly support the ecosystem having tradability in the marketplace. But I think it's important that that's done by the ecosystem in a manner that's consistent with how the overall environment puts it together. From a legal perspective, it's not the job of the company to provide a secondary market. That's the job of exchanges and others that are out there. So we're certainly not running an exchange. You know, we've taken the steps to make it a simple process so that if an exchange chooses to list us, they can.
Now, I've seen other Ethereum-based token sales in the past that were very simple. You just go there and send ethers to their ether address. And then I've seen some such as, I think it was Lunar, that was extremely difficult, where you had to go through a lengthy process to send ethers to them. Are you guys going to have like a portal or a login for the participants to just log in, and then that way they can check on it?
It's one of the reasons. Yeah, no. So we would prefer to collect people's emails so that we can communicate with them. And so the only process is that in the pre-sale, we're emailing you a link, and therefore in the process, your email is captured as part of a unique identifier, so that we can communicate with those people that we're buying. And at least we have a validated email. In the crowd sale, we'll just request that you type in your email. We can't prevent you from typing in an incorrect email, but then you won't get any information from us. It's our only mechanism to communicate with our buyers about the product and its available uses and new and exciting announcements. So we strongly suggest providing an email address is quite useful, and that's been our focus. We're trying to keep it straightforward and simple, but also with the right security wrapped around it so that it meets our needs from a legal construct as well as from the marketplaces. We've had very strong legal and tax support in this project. So Perkins Coie has done all our legal work for this project, and we've used Deloitte for all of our tax works on it. So we've gone down the path of having the right infrastructure and partners to help us make sure that we're approaching this in a manner that protects everyone who's involved.
Okay, and when does the token sale end? Because you said it starts on July 24th, 25th, you said?
It starts on the 25th, and it runs for a month, so it ends on August 24th.
Okay. Now, okay, so for 30 days then? Correct. Okay. Now, on your website, it says that the pre-sale is available, and it says, please contact presale at Rivetz International, INTL.com. Is that a different? That's correct. Is that a different?
No, that's correct. I gave you the wrong email address. It's INTL. Okay. It's the way we have a corporate structure. Rivetz is a Delaware corporation, and we've set up an offshore organization to actually run this sale so that we can properly support the international transactions that come out of it. And so we did that over the course of the last month. So Rivetz International is properly executing the transaction.
Okay, so Rivetz, INTL.com is a correct ad domain.
That is the correct domain for Rivetz, yes.
Okay, okay. And if anyone is not sure, they can go to Rivetz.com and click on the token sale link, and it'll take you to the correct website. In case you're not sure of the spelling that I had on this video. Okay.
Yeah, and we'll have a proper domain cert on our crowd sale as well, so you'll be able to see the green bar and the company's name at the top. Most people haven't done that. That's one of the things, if anybody's doing a token sale, that we ran into very near the end of getting ready for the pre-sale, is that it takes a number of days to get a proper verified certificate. They cost $1,000 versus a free cert. It's not a huge deal, but it provides much better legitimacy to sites. And I would strongly recommend that people do that ahead of time, because it's one of the things you can't do last minute.
Okay. And then did you have any other questions about the token sale, or Leon?
No, that's it for me. I think that's pretty much all the questions I had.
Okay. Did you have anything else to add, Stephen? Because that's all the questions I have for now also.
No, I think it's great. Hey, thanks for having me on your show. And I would just say that, as people participate and buy different tokens and utility tokens, and you think about all these projects, security is a really important piece. And we need to support the security ecosystem as we support the rest of the ecosystem, because security is what protects the value in the long term.
Okay. And then also one last question is that, do you guys have any support or anything in case anybody are confused by the token sale? Is there a good contact or email for the or Twitter that the users can contact for questions?
Yeah, we've listed our Twitter feed, and so I'm personally paying attention to Twitter. I'm at SKS Wave on Twitter, and I also have a Telegram account, which we just validated the other day. So there's a good chain of my comments on Telegram as well. And certainly, if you want to send us email, my email is not hard. It's steven@rivetz.com. You can send me an email. Happy to take your emails.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for taking the time from Barcelona to join us on this interview. We'll let it process, and then we'll probably get it out later today after it's YouTube processes it. So thanks for joining us on this.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, and thanks for joining us also, leonfu.com. And this will conclude the broadcast about Rivetz. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.